Hello, welcome to Andy Auto Walk. Today I'll be doing another IEM review, and this time it will be TKZK Ouranos. Let's check it out. TKZK Ouranos. I know it's a bit difficult to perhaps to pronounce, but it is basically O, not Q. And for anybody who's not aware of it, TKZK is essentially a sub-brand from TIN HiFi. All right. If I'm not mistaken, this is also their second release of TKZK product after the first one, which is TKZK Wave, which I reviewed over a year ago. And they are focusing on the budget segment. So essentially, this is a $55 IEM from TKZK. So let's have a look at what's inside the box. It is pretty much a very simple affair, right? No nonsense box here. And inside you will find the IEM itself, of course, and high purity SPC cable terminated in 3.5 mm single-ended, which I think is the only option provided. And here you would see two different sets of tips, which surprisingly look to me like both narrow bore. Okay, there's no such thing as like medium bore or wide bore, but perhaps the thickness of the tips are different. And again, as usual, I don't use this tip because, personally I always prefer foam tips. So my entire review will be both based on my own foam tips. Here in this case, I use Deconi medium. Okay, now let's have a look at the IEM itself. For a budget IEM, I must say that this is a very impressive looking unit made out of resin, not exactly transparent. And what's more important is that what's inside. It is a single dynamic driver, apparently still quite popular even today, because single dynamic driver are a lot easier to implement and tune. And it's exactly a 10 mm CNT dynamic driver, nano tube, with the rated sensitivity at 110 dB. Very sensitive, I would say. And the impedance being at 32 ohm, which hopefully also means that it will be less prone to floor noises. Okay. Looking at the build here, again, like I mentioned, it does look premium for something which is designed to be affordable. And here's the interesting part. All right. For people who are familiar with TIN HiFi, in fact, I will be referring back to one of the most popular release last year for budget segment from TIN HiFi. There's something that which we known as TIN HiFi T3 Plus. Okay, let me just say it out loud here, what I think. This is essentially the same housing enclosure as TIN HiFi T3 Plus with the same exact driver size, except that, of course, TIN HiFi T3 Plus is built on a DLC dynamic driver. And what I suspect is that TIN HiFi has provisioned this to their sub-brand of TKZK to release an even cheaper version of T3 Plus with a different driver, totally new driver. And perhaps that is why I will always refer to T3 Plus in my sound impression after this. Let's find out how does this Ouranos sounds like. Okay, perhaps I should make it as simple as possible. I did mention earlier that this looks really similar to T3 Plus, TIN HiFi T3 Plus, and they in fact came from the same company. TKZK is, like I say, it's a sub-branding for TIN HiFi. So, in fact, on the aspect of sound, they do sound similar. Alright, okay? And for the sound impression itself, I would categorize the, what do you call it? The sound characteristic of this Ouranos and T3 Plus can be defined as a mild V, okay, sound curve, and also something that will be generally described as safe tuning. And this is even something which I think, which has been, should I say, conditioned to be in a way even more pleasing, or should I say easy to listen to, as compared to the a bit more energetic T3 Plus. Okay, before I go a bit further on that comparison, let's just have a look at how it handles on the aspect of tone, timbre, tonality, and dynamics. Okay, being something which is relatively safe tune, okay, the level of energy, the level of dynamics handling the transient itself is something that I would consider as very mild. Not actually bad. Very is not the word. It is mild, it is relaxing, and it easygoing. It does not present itself being very energetic, like, you know, for example, like headset sound hard mirror. That is something that I would consider very energetic. So for Ouranos, it is somewhere between hard mirror and moondrop area. Okay, so it's a middle ground. If you are looking for something which is like, you know, well balanced with regard to dynamics handling, the way it, you know, present dynamics, the transient flow and everything like this, then Ouranos has it. Much similar to T3 Plus. Okay. And when it comes to timbre and tonality, okay, the good thing that's at least in my book scores very well for Ouranos is that it offers organic type of presentation. And when I say organic, it does not exhibit any kind of metallic, or should I say digital sound. Okay, it sounds, even some people would even describe it as being warm. Okay, depending on what type of preference you have. Okay, and with that regard, perhaps people who are more into analytical sort of presentation, which is again, you know, can be found in some IEM, they may find that, you know, TKZK Ouranos not as resolving, but that is not the case, because resolution is not entirely based on how detailed the, or how energetic, or how sharp the presentation is. At least that's how I see it. Okay, and again, let's go back to the dynamic range. Okay, first we talk about the mid-range itself. The mid-range of Ouranos being a VU tune, mild V, I would say that it's fairly good with the frontal presentation. It does not sound recessed, and it has a good balance of, let's say, a tone and organic tone to the instruments and also to vocals. It does not matter really if it's like a male or female vocals. What it does sound to me is that it sounds natural, slightly a bit warm, okay, and with ample amount of texture and definition to it. Okay, it's not just too upfront. Again, going back to the concept of safe tune, meaning that the upper mid range does not exhibit any kind of peaky kind of, let's say, should I say, pinna glare, which can be observed with female vocal, especially those who are like Alison Krauss, which have a soprano, or even, let's say, Mariah Carey, which is like soprano, alto, very sharp. But Ouranos will handle them really well. Okay, and with somebody like Diana Krall, it's even, or even Sini Egg, their vocal can sound a bit warm, on the warmer side, which is kind of like, to me at least, it is pleasing, especially when listening to jazz. As for the other aspect of the instrument, I would expect that, you know, it is actually quite pleasing as well, especially when talking about how guitars, string instrument, drums, percussion are being presented. It does not exhibit any kind of sharpness edge to the presentation, especially when, you know, highly picked rock or metal guitar. The attack is just about right, the speed and the decay itself. Okay, so now going to the upper frequency. So again, as I mentioned earlier, going back to the keyword safe tune, this Ouranos does not exhibit something that I would consider as, let's say, very pronounced extension. In fact, it's something which can be described as relaxed sort of presentation when it comes to treble extension. The micro detail is there. The micro detail is subdued. Okay, it is still there, I can hear it if you listen carefully, meaning that especially when paired with a highly resolving partner, something like DC03 Pro or even OVDS B1 or highly resolving source, then I would be able to hear micro details properly. But if paired with something which is a bit more relaxed, let's say anything under 1 BRMS, something which is not that analytical, then the micro detail for treble extension would be a bit subdued, which in turn also means that the energy, the sparkle, and the brightness of the treble itself would seem to be a bit mild. Okay, so depend on what sort of sound do you like. For treble sensitive people, this is a huge plus. And going to the bass itself, what I like about this is that despite being V-tuned or the craze with Harman type of tuning nowadays, TKZK Ouranos is very well balanced with mid bass and sub bass presentation, meaning that I do not feel that the mid bass is being too strong to overwhelm sub bass, and the sub bass is enough. All right, not too much to a point that it will present itself like some of the Harman tune IEM, which you can actually literally feel the bass presence. So TKZK is in fact a bit more reserved than T3 Plus or even Aria. Okay, so with that regard, I would say that it has ample punch and rumble to enjoy even, let's say, electronic music. It has ample cleanliness and speed and resolution to the bass itself. But in the overall scheme of things, don't expect it to be something which can satisfy bass head or anybody who love Harman sort of tuning. It is just a bit more on the neutral side. It's not exactly neutral, but it is still, good for casual listening. And switching to technicality, one thing that I am impressed about this TKZK Ouranos, it is not exactly stellar, but again, the keyword here, it is well balanced. The soundstage itself, the projection of soundstage, it feels wide and complemented with an imaging which is holographic, and that is a huge plus especially for single dynamic driver, because what I have observed recently is that even some of the better dynamic driver will exhibit a tendency to sound like right and left, okay, with that kind of their traditional split of stereo. But this is one of the few dynamic driver IEM that can project a soundstage which offer a holographic imaging good enough for gaming. I was like gaming this Fallout earlier for 4 hours on this, and I can tell you it can track footsteps very well. Okay, so it is good for gaming as well. And of course, when it comes to the other aspect of technicalities, the resolution is good, the definition is good, the speed is good, the layering seems clean to me. I was able to track individual instrument properly. Okay, not as clinical as some other IEM, perhaps. Okay, let me just put it out, like even Tanjim Zero have a bit more clinical separation and resolution. But what TKZK offer Ouranos is that something which is clean and respectable. Okay, it does not get congested with complex music. So that's pretty much how I would describe TKZK Ouranos in a nutshell for the entire aspect of sounds performance. Okay, let's just conclude it. I already love TIN HiFi T3 Plus, and I will compare it again against T3 Plus, because what I'm hearing is that something which is a bit more, let's say, this is TIN HiFi T3 Plus, take a step back, okay, not forward but back, and tune it to be a bit more, let's say, should I say, relaxed, in a way that it has in fact lesser amount of lower frequency performance than the original T3 Plus. So a matter of saying that the T3 Plus would appear now a bit bassy and a bit more energetic. And this is in fact offer a lot more well-balanced sound throughout the entire spectrum. For me, at least, that is something which I like. Okay, and comparing it against the other popular, let's say, competition, again, I will bring back to, let's say, headset sound, Hurt Mirror. Everybody knows it. So many people love it. Definitely, this is something which is tuned differently, right? Hazard Sound Hutch Mirror is a treble head kind of IEM, very energetic, very bright, upper frequency, and then it's fast and it's resolving. But if you find Hazard Hutch Mirror to be like a bit too spicy for your taste, this is the solution. Or if compared to something which is a bit darker, yes, which is Moondrop Aria. Aria to me sounds like a U curve kind of harmonish kind of tuning, which is heavier with bass, and then a bit subdued on the upper frequency, and even more subdued on the mid range. But it is also something which I consider as pleasingly nice to listen to, just a bit darker compared to this. All right, so that's pretty much how I would compare TZK Ouranos in a nutshell. For my own perspective, I would say that if anybody would to spend around $50 for an IEM, this is one of them to consider. It is an amazing IEM actually, considering the price. All right, there you have it. Thank you.